Okay, well, I appreciate everybody being out. This is unbelievable. I really appreciate you taking time out of your schedules tonight to be here. I want to. My vision on the campaign trail, if you will, is to be a listener. You know, I don't want to speak so much. I hate bragging about myself. I hate talking about myself. I guess you have to a little bit when you're running for office, a little bit. But really, tonight I also want to listen and hear what concerns you have in the city. You know, what you'd like to see. But I'll introduce myself a little bit, talk about my vision, and then we'll just kind of open it up and have some discussions. But again, been out here in Herriman 8 years. Grew up in Price, Utah, if you know where Price, Utah is. My father was a coal miner. He was not a coal miner, but he was in the mine. He was a diesel mechanic in the coal mines, underground. The mine he worked in was his shop was so far underground. The mine they were mining was, the coal was so far underground, they ended up building him a shop underground where every day he'd show up to the coal mine and he'd take an hour ride underground, and then his shop was underground. It was so true son of a coal miner, if you will. Like I said, been up here 8 years. I've got 5 kids, only one here tonight. I've got a 21-year-old that came off of a mission during the COVID time. He was in Dominican Republic on an LDS mission. I've got one boy serving an LDS mission now in Tucson, Arizona. And then I've got twins, like I said, that are 17 right now. My 4 are, I don't hide this, my 4 are from a previous marriage. They live with their mom, the twins at least live with their mom in West Jordan. We've got a great relationship with their wife. You know, years ago, it was 15 years ago, my twins were, I think, 2 when we went through a divorce. And we've had a great relationship. Matter of fact, I tell everybody I get bonus points because she walked in the parade with me. If you came to the parade, my ex-wife walked in our parade. That's the kind of relationship we have. And then my wife, Christy, and I have been married 12 years ago. Last Sunday was our 12-year anniversary. And then we've got our 4-year-old now. He was a lot of prayers and sweat and a lot of effort to get him here. He's kind of our miracle boy, honestly. We tried for a lot of years to have him, and he came along.
More effort for some of us than others.
Right, yes. Heather, come on up. I'll stop talking. Heather, come on up. This is Heather. If you guys don't know Heather, Heather's a good friend of mine. She's also on the planning commission with me. Heather is an all-star in the city. She does so much good for the city too. Yep. As far as career, I started out right after I served an LDS mission in Uruguay from 96 to 98. Right after my mission, I went to work for a company called Echo House of Hose. If anybody knows, not around anymore, but they were around for a lot of years. They were a 50-year-old company at the time. They've been bought out by, like everybody else, they've been bought out by numerous people. So I sold hydraulic hose for a living. I managed several of their locations, so I was in business management. Eventually took a job as a distributor for a company out of Australia selling hydraulic hoses. I was a sales manager covering the western U.S. Did that for about 4 years. And that's when we found out we were pregnant with our 4-year-old. And at the time, my wife, she had a master's in finance when we met and was working on her career already when we met. And we're married, and so she was well into her career. She is a CFO at a bank downtown. She's extremely successful in her career. And I get emotional when I talk about what she does, but she's an amazing woman that does a lot for our family. But when we had the decision, when we found out we were pregnant, it was a miracle. I was traveling. I would leave every Monday. I'd fly out every Monday and come back every Thursday or Friday night, which when you're going to have a little one around, it's not really the life I wanted to keep going. And she was doing her career and doing so well. So at that point, I decided to be a stay-at-home dad. So I took that step, and it was something you don't grow up saying you're going to be, guys don't grow up saying they're going to be a stay-at-home dad or whatever. It's been the hardest and most rewarding job I've had yet. And then once I got home, I was a volunteer president of a recreation soccer league in West Jordan at the time. And when they found out I was kind of had some open availability part-time, the State Soccer Association, or Utah Youth Soccer they call it, reached out to me and asked me to come to the state office and run recreation soccer for the whole state of Utah. So they asked me to bring some of the ideas that I was running with my league in West Jordan and incorporate them across the state. So now that's what I do right now. I'm a stay-at-home dad and then working that part-time. And that's kind of what, kind of inspired me to run a little bit. I've got the capacity to do it. He'll be in school in a year. So I've got the bandwidth to take this on. And then as far as politically what drove me into this, I'm not a politician, I have no desires to be a state representative or anything like that's not. For me, the office of mayor in a city like this is about community service. It's not about, truly for me, it's not about politics. I'm not out to win. I'm not out to win voters for another future race. I'm here to serve our city right now and do what's best for our city right now. I got involved in the community really 7 years ago, really right after we moved in out here. There's a development coming in. It's the same developer that's doing Olympia Hills. He was doing a project straight west of Herriman High School. It was on 300 acres, and at the time he was proposing 2,000 units on that property. And so at the time we created a group called Utah for Responsible Growth, or Herriman for Responsible Growth. If any of you guys are on Facebook, I started the Herriman for Responsible Growth group with a group of my neighbors and friends in the area. And it was, honestly, we tried to give voice to the residents at the time. We went to the city council meetings. We felt like they weren't listening to us at the time. It was truly more about the developer at that point. They bowed to the developer's demands at that point, despite, all the good arguments that the residents had at the time. And so they didn't listen to us, so we filed a referendum at the time with the city. So we spent 45 days gathering signatures around the city. We gathered enough signatures to be successful. But then the developer came to us and said, okay, we recognize your referendum is going to be successful, so let's talk. Let's negotiate then. So at that point, he negotiated down to about 900 units at that point, which is phenomenal. If you go over there now, Bartons, you guys know, it's actually going to be a nice development now. North of the creek that goes through right there, there are smaller lots, but there's no multifamily in there. And then south of that creek it's all going to be what you call estate properties. They're all going to be half acre, third acre, or 1 acre properties, which we desperately need in this area, if you ask me. It's expensive right now, but he's going to sell them. He's developing it. They just broke ground a couple weeks ago.
In the whole Olympia Hills area?
No, that's the one just north of the cemetery, right across the street from the cemetery.
Right.
Yeah. So that's when I got involved. That was about 5 or 6 years ago. With that responsible growth group. And then from there, that responsible growth group really became a power in the state. We had other groups reach out to us. We had Colville for Responsible Growth that broke out reached out to us and created their own. And they fought a big resort community that was coming in that wanted to make Little Colville more like Park City. So we kind of taught them how to fight the fight, if you will. And they were successful in their referendum as well up there. We've had other kind of break-off groups from our responsible growth group to where the state legislature became afraid of our group. Doran was a big part of that. We became very respected, even though we weren't politicians. We were just residents out here fighting for, other residents, and we became a force. And so that inspired me to really kind of stand up and get involved. I applied to be on the planning commission just over 3 years ago. They accepted me, even though I'm not an architect. I'm not they just knew I had a vision, of what the city could be at the time. So I've been on the planning commission now 3 years. And we've done amazing things on the planning commission. If you haven't been out to a planning commission meeting in 3 years, it's very different than what you would have seen 5-10 years ago. We're just setting the bar higher for developers coming in. Matter of fact, just right now, we just passed some design standards for high density housing. It was always, the high density housing never had to be as nice as the single family homes. And you could see that with some of our high density housing in the city. I think some of us could swallow high density housing more if it would have been attractive high density housing, and if it would have been planned out the right way, if there would have been parking. So we just passed as a planning commission new standards that they now have to also have 40% brick and stone on a high density project. So no longer can they just build these, what I call the army barracks out here. They're they're not attractive. And I feel bad for the people that, I know they're people's homes, but I don't know how you know which house is yours when you pull in at night, but. So that's kind of my background. That's where I'm at today. Yes, please.
Have you put some limits on how much more of that?
We have not approved, yes.
Yeah, so it goes in with the general plan that we've been working on.
Yep. So we've been working on a general plan that'll go tomorrow night. It's actually, there's public comment on the new general plan, which is what we actually did the referendum on 6 years ago, and it took them taken them 5 or 6 years to redo that whole thing. But we have not, anything that we have not approved any high density that's come to the Planning Commission other than what was already approved. And that, I know people I've talked, when I've knocked doors, people are saying, I'm sick of people saying it was approved years ago. Sometimes that's just a fact that there was stuff approved. Everything at Town Center was approved 10, 12 years ago. You know, we can't do anything to stop some of that stuff going in at Town Center. Rosecrest, a lot of the Rosecrest, which was surprising to me when I got in. Rosecrest has a kind of an agreement in their master development agreement that if they buy property from somebody else that's adjacent to their existing property, they're automatically entitled to the same number of units per acre that the rest of Rosecrest has. So even if we wanted to say, you know, we only want, you know, 3 units per acre on something like that, if Rosecrest comes in and buys that, their MDA that MDA from, again, 12 years ago or so allows them to do that, which is a horrible deal for the city, honestly, horrible deal. So we're doing what we can to at least improve. If there just is some stuff that comes in like that, at least it's nicer. But as far as what we've approved on the Planning Commission in 3 years, our mentality is you need a balance. I mean, I think I've lived in a townhome, I've lived in an apartment. I think we've all been there, so we're not against that, but I just think there needs to be a balance. I truly think, and we're out of balance right now. So as far as affordability goes, all the studies show that it should be a 30% to 70% balance. 30% high density to 70%, because that's what the studies show that gives the affordability. Right now, what I believe, this might not be, what I believe is because we've only built so much high density housing, there's such a limited availability of single family type homes that the law of supply and demand, that the supply is low, so the demand is up for that level. So those prices are going up, and then every level below that is coming up beneath it. And that's why you're seeing townhomes in Herriman City sell for $500,000 right now. Supply and demand, not just supply and demand in general, but it started at that top level. So I think if we were to get more in line, then I think we could really do ourselves some favors out here. So.
But you don't have any control over Olympia Hills, right?
Olympia Hills, I'll talk to Olympia Hills right now. And Councilman Shields just walked in. I'll recognize Councilman Steve Shields. I appreciate him being here tonight. That's a great question. So a year ago in March, as you guys know, the county council approved. They knew they weren't getting anywhere with the city. So the county council, they went to the county. And even before that, at least a year before that, they received approval from the county for nearly 10,000. It was just shy of 10,000 units out there. I think the developer was even shocked that he received approval for 10,000 units from this county council. But then, of course, there was the petition that went around. If you guys know Justin Swain, there was a petition that went around, a lot of hype around that, and then Mayor McAdams at the time vetoed it. And my personal opinion is I think he did that to gain some political points at the time, because he was in another race for Congress at that time, and this is a very powerful voting bloc out here right now, and I think he needed our votes out here. So I think he knew that the developer would come back after, because he could come bring it back to the county. So I think he knew that could happen, so he vetoed it. Developer came back at that 6,300 units, and it was approved. Again, we tried to rally and do another referendum at the time, and that was in March. And as you know, about a week after that, COVID hit. And honestly, I tell everybody honestly, we couldn't have, the referendum wouldn't have gone through. We couldn't have, because it was a county-wide referendum, we would have had to gather 85,000 signatures from the whole county, and a certain percentage in each council district around the whole county. And yes, if somebody's going to go to Rose Park or up in the avenues or anything, they're not going to care. They're not going to care what. Matter of fact, they would be thrilled that it was coming out here and not up in their area, honestly. So we never would have done it. But at the same time, COVID did shut us down. They wouldn't let us gather signatures electronically. We fought to do that. They wouldn't let us do that. We couldn't knock doors. So at that point, it's approved. So right now, it is still approved in the county. They have applied for annexation into Herriman City. The developer. So an annexation, the city doesn't go out and ask for an annexation, and the landowner has to apply for the annexation. So that's where we're at right now. There's negotiations going on right now. They are considering the annexation application tomorrow night, or city council meeting. I'm assuming it's there. My thought is, and I agree, I think they're going to approve that just because it just continues. That doesn't mean it's coming into the city. That just means the negotiations can continue at that point, that they're interested in doing it. So the city council is doing a very thorough analysis right now of the development. And if you ask me whether we want it in the county or the city, at this point, because it's approved, we're going to have the impact in our city, whether we want it or not, whether it's coming or not. We're going to have the impacts in our city. If it goes through the county, there's no what they call impact fees. There's no impact fees that will come. There's something in the master development agreement through the county that they're supposed to pay to help some of the infrastructure outside their development, but that's never been defined. And my guess is in the county, this Ryan, we don't even know who it is because the guy that was supposed to be the administrator of that at the county is no longer works for the county. So he was going to be the one that determines how much the cities were to get to help, and it wasn't defined. There was going to be arguments about that. So honestly, at this point, I think our best option is to annex it into the city, to try to negotiate a better deal, because that way we do get the impact fees. We can, at that point, pay for some of the infrastructure in our city. So unfortunately, to stop it, there's not. And I'm not going to be that politician that stands up here and says, we're going to go fight for it. There really is nothing. And I'm in that area. My backyard is on Herriman Parkway, and that's going to be a 7-lane road. Right now, it's a 5-lane, not very busy. It's determined it's going to be a 7-lane, basically a highway. It's going to be in my backyard, and I'm not thrilled about it.
Which is
but 126. That keeps, yeah, yep. That goes out. Now it's going to be one of the major roads into Olympia Hills. So
We only know numbers around here, so.
right. So I say 100. It's funny because it's not 126 because I'm 123rd and I'm south of 126th. So, but anyways, but 126th.
Who pays for that infrastructure? Who pays for the
In Olympia Hills, it'll be a mix. So there will be a mix of private lanes and private roads and public roads. So it's going to be an HOA. A large part of it's going to be in an HOA. And so some of the main infrastructure, the roads, the city will be. Well,
So you would be paying for that?
yep. Right. But there are impact fees that go into that. That's what impact fees are supposed to help recover. And that's part of the analysis they're doing right now, is determining, if it's financially, is it a good bet for the city to bring them in with knowing we've got all those costs coming still. And the studies say, there's a study done analyzing Olympia Hills and whether we should annex it or not. And honestly, the study came back and said we can't afford to not annex it. So.
I have a rhetorical question.
Yes.
How much did the developer contribute to Jenny Wilson's re-election campaign?
Way too much.
He did. That's all I'll say is he did. So.
What I read was about $35,000.
That wouldn't surprise me. Yeah. And again, yeah.
So who controls county government?
Right. And the thing is, it cost 3 people their seats on county council. I mean, we may not have been able to overturn it, but our responsible growth group was very influential, and 3 people lost their seats that voted for it. So Shireen Gorbani lost. She was an at-large. We got Laurie Stringham in there in her place, largely because of this area that wanted, Shireen out. Max Burdick over in Sandy, even though he was on the East Bench, even those people recognized that he didn't listen, and we had an influence. So we got somebody else in there. So it was good. We turned the council now. There's finally some representation on the county council from this area now. And honestly, of course it doesn't do anything now. It's too late. But I think Olympia Hills would have a very different result had it been a year later. But he knew what he was doing. That developer had to get that in before those elections. So yeah. So that's kind of my background. That's where I got involved, like I said. So I feel like that's what I bring to the table. I was involved as a resident, so I fought alongside residents when I felt like people weren't listening. And then being on the planning commission, I've been able to see the ins and outs of the city government, how it works. Planning commission isn't political. There's no campaigns to run for planning commission. It's really just looking at, what you feel is best for the city. And that's where I'm at now. I just really want to serve, and that's what I want to do.
So what about business?
That's okay, and that's where I'll get. That's my platform. I've got 4 main goals, and I've listed them back on here, right? You can look these up, and then please follow. I've got a Facebook page. I've got a website. You can read more about that. So I'll start with business, just because you asked. Commercial tax base is so critical. If we don't want to see, the one thing that our group brought up at the time was our city was very reliant on what I call one-time money, or those impact fees. It's easy for a city to stay, fiscally sound when it's growing, because you got those impact fees that help provide for that. But once a city stops growing, and those impact fees stop coming in, you've got those one-time money, that's when commercial tax base is critical. It has changed a little bit. It's not, and I'm not saying it's not critical. It's not as critical, luckily. The online tax that the Utah changed the law a few years ago, there's an online tax that comes back to our city, and we're going to see a big portion of that go up once our new census numbers come in later this year. So we'll get a bigger portion of that, which will help. That'll be a huge help. But at the same time, we still have to fight. We've got to get some commercial out here. I believe in preserving every single possible acre we can right now for commercial, especially along Mountain View. I think it's critical, and there's a few, if Olympia Hills is going to come, I think there's a few, areas where we could, make sure we get some commercial along those to grab that. Every little bit helps. I know the big Facebook gripe is we've got enough gas stations. We've got enough. I'd rather have a gas station than nothing, to be honest. They're paying taxes. It might not be ideal, but let's be honest, Walmart or Target's not going to build on 6400 West and 126. It's not realistic, so we take what we, but at the same time, I believe we can go out and be more creative as a city. We found that there's some groups we've been missing that could fight on our behalf to recruit some unique businesses in this area. I think we're going to have to do that. I think we still are an end-of-the-road community, if you will. Nobody's driving through Herriman to get anywhere. So we've got to be creative in what we do to bring people out here to spend their dollars in our city.
Slow again, I didn't get the drift, okay. Was there an opportunity to put a Costco in just west of McDonald's on 126th?
From what I understand, it was going to be on 134th. Yeah, 134th and Mountain View right there. We did, talking to the economic development people, our package was better to Costco. We did come out with a better incentive package to bring Costco to Herriman. I couldn't tell you why. I've got my opinions, but I'll keep those to myself because they're not fact. I don't like conjecture. But they chose to go to Riverton. I don't know if it's location, but we did put an aggressive incentive package out there to try to bring Costco.
Who would know why? Because that's the second time we've lost Costco in Herriman.
I don't know, Councilman Shields, who would know? There's probably closed door meetings, I'm guessing. A lot of that we probably can't. I don't want to put you on the spot, but.
Let's just say that the information I have suggested that they thought there would be an easier path forward with their asks and desires going through Riverton than if they came through Herriman.
So it wasn't the rumor that the LDS church didn't want to sell with them?
I doubt it. No, I doubt that because that's still zoned. I've heard there's something coming on that same plot. There's something coming down the pipes right now. Even some stuff being worked on right now. So
basically, you're saying they thought that Riverton City would be easier to deal with than Herriman City.
That is the way it's been explained to me. That is a big part of their decision making. Yes.
And the one thing I will say is we've been 2.5 years without an acting mayor, and we've felt that lack of leadership in this city big time.
Good move.
And I don't know what that plays into a lot of stuff, but when you don't have that leader that's out there fighting for that stuff, it's a big deal. Your city council can be doing everything they can, but there's still something, even though in our city the mayor basically is just an at-large city council member, that's still something about, there's still something about that title that other people want to interact with when they can't interact with the mayor because we haven't allowed him to. It hurts us. I think we've lost a lot of opportunities because of our situation.
Again for reelection.
No, thank goodness. So I've got a calendar at home counting down until he's out of office. So, not just for me personally, just I think our city's desperate for some change, for some new.
Well, you're on.
So, AJ.
Yeah, what has the city looked into like a municipal fiber network? Because I was looking at CenturyLink, they don't have like fiber up in this area, and I'm not sure if it's down more in Herriman, but honestly, I've seen a lot of cities across the country who have built their own network, and it's been pretty good to help replace impact fees.
Yep, absolutely. That's what you'll see.
I work for a company that does that.
Oh, you do?
Well, we do the software. We're not
Right.
operator.
No, I would love, if you'll look at my platform, and Steve and I have been talking about this before, I would love to have something like a Google Fiber, something like that in this area. Absolutely. I think it's critical. I think it's critical for the city, the work from home aspect, and if we want to recruit, I would love to see, my personal vision is the city extends all the way out to Porter Rockwell, right? You've got a little bit, even though like the D-Bats, where D-Bats is up on the hill, a lot of people don't realize Herriman City, right? There's I think there's an opportunity with some of the overflow from Silicon Slopes to bring some office type jobs out to that side of the city. But it's critical we have that infrastructure in place.
It's nice that Bangor keeps getting streamlined. That'll make it even better.
Absolutely. So I think it's critical. I mean, Riverton just did that. Riverton just put in a. So I've got to meet with Trent Staggs coming up to understand that aspect. But I know the city council's been looking into it as well.
Full
So.
disclosure that we've had a task force looking into it for about 8 months.
Oh, cool.
And there's some plans we're about to propose to the council as a whole to take some action, so hopefully that'll come to fruition quickly.
Yeah,
Yep.
I just don't like Comcast.
Right. Amen. Amen. Absolutely. Yes, Brian. Yes.
Yeah, just a little bit more on the business. I've talked with a couple of small business owners as they've been talking about like where to set up new shops and stuff. And I say, hey, come on out to Herriman, we're growing, it's awesome. And they're like, yeah, we looked at it, and it's just way too expensive. When you just mentioned you prepared a package for cost, how does that work with wooing small businesses to set up shop here?
I mean, that's a great question because there's not. I mean, Deb and I have talked a lot about this. Deb owns Salt City Sweet Shop, so that's Deb's business. Her and I have talked a lot about. We've got to do better at supporting small businesses out here. We've got to do. Matter of fact, there's a discussion even tomorrow night. I keep bringing up. There's a lot tomorrow night on the city council agenda. Tomorrow night there's a discussion about some property around City Hall right now. We've got some opportunity right around. There's some commercial. There's 4 commercial pads left around at Town Center, right? And what are the opportunities we can do to offer some incubator businesses? I mean, there's one success story. Shareology. If anybody knows what Shareology is, they've been a very great success story. Started in a live-work unit over in the Cove, and now they've outgrown it. They need something else. They've been that's another example of, And then you look at some challenges. Deb was in a rough situation where she's at with promise years ago of commercial across the street from her. Her building's kind of backwards. It's really. I think it's really. But there was at that point, everything Town Center was facing. You look at it from an aerial, everything's facing City Hall. But then when you put the high density housing there, suddenly she doesn't feel like she's facing. Now she's facing away from the main corridor. So that's really hurt her business. So the city, in my opinion, we haven't done enough to support businesses like her either to be successful. My personal opinion, I can give an opinion on this because I'm not on city council right now, but we've got to give some incentives for small businesses to start here, and to be able to be successful and then grow with us. There's some opportunities tomorrow in the council. They're going to discuss whether to sell that land to a developer and let them build it, or have the city, because it's city property right now. My personal opinion is the city should lease that and give these small businesses opportunities to be successful. So I mean, I know there's not a lot of incentives that you can. I mean, there still could be small packages for small. We need it. The fact of the matter is, we may have to make some sacrifices now, while we are growing. If there's ever time as a city to make sacrifices, is when there are some impact fees coming in, that we can, maintain what we're doing still. And then in 5 years, when impact fees might be an issue, then we've got that tax base, that commercial tax base. So.
But the problem is the property owners are the ones that determine the rent.
Right.
And the rent is sky high. And the city can't do anything about that.
That's very true.
So, for some reason, Herriman is higher than anywhere.
Right. I mean, Herriman's a hot spot right now. It really is. People want to, which is a good and bad thing, right? It's good.
Businesses don't. Small businesses don't want to come here.
Right. Because you can't afford. It's.
Yeah.
But.
Yeah.
So we've got to be, in my opinion, we've got to be creative. I mean, we've joked about it. Everybody. I did a post online about the storage units, about sea containers. And a lot of people think they're nasty in a backyard, but if you know Vegas, there's a very successful container store park down there that's very successful. I think we've got to be creative. I'm not saying that's the solution, but I'm just saying we've got to be creative as a city right now to get that stuff out. We've got to think outside the box. We can't just be hoping Walmart or Target let's be realistic. A lot of that's probably not going to come out this way.
So I really liked those Herriman bucks that we got. Did you see a benefit from that?
Oh, yeah, totally. But that was all part of the COVID money. So that wasn't Herriman. That was Herriman spending the money that the federal government
But that's
gave them.
how.
But in a creative way, though, yeah. So
Yeah.
it was,
It was
Herriman
awesome.
yeah.
It was really good, yeah.
But I think we need some more shop local campaigns. I know, even what Riverton did, even during the pandemic, that may have been driven by the pandemic, but why don't we, yes, let's do some of those events where people drive through the park and you get to see all the little businesses that are around. we've got to take advantage of stuff like this. So I appreciate that question. So.
We pay a pretty good chunk of property taxes.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And the city gets next to nothing.
Correct. Yep.
We pay our own law enforcement. We're going to pay our own fire department.
Mm-hmm.
And we send a lot of money to the county for law enforcement and fire protection. As you read the printout that they send us every year, it's all broken down, and next
Right.
goes to law enforcement, next goes to fire.
Right.
Why can't the city get some of that county money back into the city?
Now, if I understand it correctly, I don't want to, but like this year, there's 2 line items on the tax. I just saw, because property tax just came out. Some were emailed this week, right? I just saw. So there is a line on there that shows a county fire, and it shows a previous tax, but that will go to 0 this year. That will be 0 this year to the county fire, and it's that is now offset by an increase into Herriman City for our own fire department. We should not be paying anything into Salt Lake County law enforcement, right? Into Slovisa. So
That's all HCC now.
Law enforcement.
So it's been swapped over.
yep, it should have been swapped over. Yeah. I mean, if you want it, you can even, my text, send it to me, and I can help you look at that, because it shouldn't be. We shouldn't be double dipping on that. The only county tax that we should be is just Salt Lake County itself now. There's a big line item for Salt Lake County, and I think your 2 big ones are the school district and the county. Those are the 2 biggest taxing entities. And now you'll see the police department and the fire, but that's honestly the balance what we would have been paying to the county anyways. And now, like for the police department, for example, I think we were in contract for 25, and these are rough numbers, like 25 officers. We were only getting 17, but we were still paying for 25 officers. We weren't getting the service out here, so we were paying into this pot and weren't getting the services back. Same thing was happening with the fire. We were paying all this money into the fire, countywide fire, and we weren't getting. They wouldn't even pay for the repairs on 103 that's over there on Main Street. I mean, we couldn't even fight for that.
Other cities.
Yeah, other cities. Yeah, let's just say other entities. A lot of I'm a big Kim Coleman fan. I loved Kim Coleman. When she was, she had a big idea to divide the county. Because I still think there's a lot of our money out here that goes to the other side of the valley. So, and I think that was true, especially with the county council before, like we talked. We didn't have anybody on the west side representing our county for years. We had Michael Jensen, who was in Magna, but he voted with the Democrats all the time, which was, this is nonpartisan, so I won't speak, but he didn't vote with he didn't fight for the west side residents, right? He aligned himself more with those from the east side. And then DeBry, he's kind of an eastern South Jordan, if you will. He's not out here understanding. He's been on our side. He's been an ally, but he was one. He was one. So anyways, I'll keep kind of running down kind of a list of my other ideas here. I talked a little bit about the better housing mix. When I put that on there, I had to be a little bit political because I will knock on a lot of doors of high density housing. So that's just a nice way of saying I just believe in a balance. I think we're maxing our high density housing, especially if Olympia comes in. Olympia will have a lot of high density housing. There will be nothing we can do. Even though we can negotiate him down to 4,500 units, even if you get 4,500 units on 900 acres, you're still going to be loaded with high density housing out there. But still, we've got to fight for everything else in the city. Then we've got to fight for that single family housing to have that mix. So that's what I talk about that. I also believe we've got to fight for the infrastructure beforehand as much as possible. I will give props right now to our finance guy at the city. This is the kind of stuff we've got to think more about. I believe the council will pass tomorrow a bond for vote tomorrow. The bond, or
Yeah, it's over, we'll see.
anyway. So the concept is there's pandemic money coming. There's still COVID relief money coming in. The city's committed about 800,000 roughly a year for the next 15 years. Is that right? Rough numbers, right? So our finance guy looked at it and thought, what's the payment on a $10 million bond? Roughly $800,000. So now we can go out. Bond rates are really good right now. So we're going to go out and bond. My guess is, we'll see, I guess. But the idea is go out and get a $10 million bond right now and just use that guaranteed money for the next 15 years to pay off that bond. So now we've got $10 million right now that we can go put in some major road needs in the city right now. That's the kind of stuff we've got to think outside the box on to get some of that infrastructure ramped up right now. Because whether Olympia Hills comes into the city or not, we've got to plan as if it's. I think we need to plan as if there's going to be 6,300 units out there. Plan like that and just do what we can. I'm the type of guy, I led the fight against Olympia Hills. I led that fight. But at the same time, I've got to kind of put my blinders on a little bit and think now what can we do best looking forward. It's hard to not look back, but it's time to look forward and see what can we do to make this a better situation for our city. So we need some unity on our council. We need a powerful council right now. And I can say that if I am elected, and if I will put a word in, if none of you are in 2 with Teddy Hodges, but he's running for council District 2 to take Clint Smith's spot. All 5 of us at one point or another have been involved in that group, Utah for Responsible Growth. We all get along. We've all worked together. We're newish to this. We're not the good old boys that have been around involved for years. Steve hasn't been involved in politics. We talked Steve into running 2 years ago. Now they turned about to me and talked me into running this year. But I work very well with Jared Henderson over in 1. I love Sherry Orn. I work very well with Sherry Orn. Steve and I become good friends through this process. And then if Teddy gets in, we could be a very powerful council. We've all worked together. We know each other. We share the same vision for where this city can be. Let me bounce on to one more thing I want to kind of talk about, then I will take more questions. I've kind of talked about a few of my concepts on here. The one thing I tell people as I'm knocking doors, more than anything, is Herriman's at a very critical crossroads right now. I tell everybody, we were kind of a baby. 15 years ago, we were this baby. We were, 10,000, 5,000 people. Then we became a teenager, went through the toddler years and a teenager. Now we're full on grown up. And if you're like my 21-year-old right now, you're trying to figure out life still. You're trying to figure out where you want to go, right? And I think Herriman is at that crossroads right now. What do we want to be as a community? We're not, I want to protect some of those horse properties, some of those rights. Absolutely, that's our heritage out here. That is our history. But at the same time, that's not all. That's not necessarily our future right now either. We've got to find a way for those 2 worlds to intersect, if you will. Right now, this is no knock on Steve. Steve and I have talked about this, as a matter of fact, so I know he doesn't disagree with me on this, but Herriman City right now lacks a vision. We lack a vision for where we want to be. The first thing that I will do if I'm elected mayor is we will sit down as a council, we will sit down as a city staff, and we will hash out a 2-day session, just a visioning workshop. We will all get on the same page of where we want to be, where we want to go. Because right now there's no direction, there's no guidance. So everything's kind of, if you don't have a vision, you do that. You set a vision and then your goals underneath your vision. If you don't have that vision, there's no way to set those goals right underneath that vision. And so we've got to set that vision. Yes?
What city in Utah has done a good job at setting a vision that we can mirror or even?
There's not a lot, to be honest. I think the closest is a place like honestly, Park City. You look at Park City, you know when you're in Park City.
Yeah.
There's an architectural there. They know what they're. It's easy for them because they're a ski resort. They're touristy. It's easy for them. But I don't think we're far off from something like my vision. And of course, I'll be one person on the council if I'm elected. But I would think we've got the resources in this area, the natural resources, the trails, just the natural environment to bring people out here. And the thing I love about the trails is the trails will be a weekend. It will be an evening and a weekend venture. But I think we highlight our trails. I think we find ways. Our new city manager's got experience bringing in a multi-sports complexes into the city. Like I said, I work in soccer right now. Doran wants a gun range. Great. If it'll get me elected, I'll tell you I'm going to look at a gun range. but I think honestly, I think we need some I think recreation can be our goal out here. Something that'll bring people out here on the weekends, whether it be soccer fields for a tournament on the weekend, or whether it's riding our trails, our mountain bike trails, or some possible ATV trails that we're looking at, or hiking over to I think that'll bring people to our area, and it'll bring people in non-peak hours, to where it's not affecting our traffic during the day, but it's bringing people out here. Then they spend their money here, and that helps our tax base too. But we've got to have this vision, and how do we make Herriman become something like that? And again, that's just my vision of what I think we can be out here. But we've got to sit down as a city and decide. There'll be 4 other people that might have a vision for out here. But until we decide on that vision, we're not going anywhere as a city. We're just kind of treading water, if you will. And I think you've seen that in our developments, kind of just not kind of here and there and no vision. Our developers partners don't even know what to do because they're not. We don't give them a vision of what we want to see out here.